The U.S. now says the Russian military has committed war crimes in Ukraine. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made the announcement as President Biden is in Brussels for a meeting with NATO leaders. NATO estimates that as many as 15,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in fighting in Ukraine. This based on Ukrainian officials and intelligence from open sources. CBS reporter Skyler Henry live at the White House with more on the high-stakes NATO summit. Skyler?
Hey, Sarah, good to see you. Well, Secretary Blinken said that he and his department will do everything in its power to make sure that they hold Russia accountable for those war crimes that the State Department is alleging. And this all stems from several different incidents that have happened across the country in the past few days, if not weeks. Remember, there was that maternity hospital that was bombed a few weeks ago. There was also that incident where a theater with the word children written on it that was also bombed, even though children was so large that it was visible from the sky. And as you mentioned, this is all happening as President Biden is in Europe meeting with Western allies to talk about how they will continue to stand with Ukraine. Now, President Biden left the White House on his way to Brussels, where he'll meet with key allies to bolster the response to Russia's attacks on Ukraine. The president will attend an emergency NATO summit and address leaders of the European Union to discuss more military aid to Ukraine. They may also agree to more sanctions and plans for tougher enforcement of existing ones. Although Ukraine isn't a member of NATO, President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to attend these meetings virtually. Here at home, lawmakers are driving home the importance of this European trip.
Biden comes into the situation and commands tremendous respect, says to NATO, we respect Article 5, we are there for you, which the previous president was being dismissive of, and that's the mutual defense provision of the NATO alliance.
Now, before returning to the White House this weekend, President Biden will stop in Poland to thank leaders for taking in the wave of Ukrainian refugees. We're talking about millions, and discuss how to relieve the humanitarian strain. There's also some rumblings that President Biden will actually have some meet and greets with some of the Ukrainian refugees themselves. We should also mention, Sarah, that the Biden administration announced tonight that that $800 million aid package that was supposed to go towards the Ukrainian military needs and humanitarian needs as well, some of that has been delivered to the Ukrainian government. So a bit of good news as this war rages on.
You know, Skyler, there have been rumblings about this now for a while, but what is the White House now saying about concerns that Putin may actually resort to using chemical weapons in Ukraine?
Well, the president was asked about that before he left for Brussels. He said that it is a possibility that President Putin could resort to using chemical weapons. Officials that we've heard from in the past few days and weeks have said that Russia is certainly backed into a corner given the Ukrainian resistance up until this point. There hasn't been any sort of suggestion of where or what or when something like this could happen, but the State Department officials have said in the past that it is possible that we could see some sort of false flag situation where Russia could purport something like that happening and then say that they're going to use chemical or biological weapons in terms of responding to that. The president, the State Department, and other officials in the Biden administration says that if Russia were to use chemical weapons, then of course they would have a swift response. What that looks like remains to be seen.
All right, we certainly hope we do not see that, but Skyler, we appreciate the reporting. Thank you.